Good morning, everybody. I call to order the March 18th, 2025 meeting of the Las Virgenes-Malibu Council of Governments Governing Board. Will the Executive Director please call the roll?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get everybody muted. Aniko Gold,
Present.
Marianne Riggins,
Here.
Alicia Weintraub,
Here.
Ray Pearl,
Present.
President Sylvester.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes they would like to make to the agenda? If not, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Thank you. Will the Executive Director please call the roll?
Who made the second?
Aniko Gold.
Thank you, Aniko. Aniko Gold,
Aye.
Marianne Riggins,
Yes.
Alicia Weintraub,
Yes.
Ray Pearl,
Aye.
President Sylvester.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. We now move on to public comment period. Are there any members of the public who would like to address the governing board? Terry, have you received any public comments electronically?
I have not.
Since we haven't, excuse me, since we have no public comments, we will go to item number 4, the consent calendar. Consent calendar items will be approved in one motion unless removed for separate discussion or action. Would anyone like to remove an item from the consent calendar? Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
Second.
Will the Executive Director call the roll?
Aniko Gold,
Aye.
Marianne Riggins,
Yes.
Alicia Weintraub,
Yes.
Ray Pearl,
Aye.
President Sylvester.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. We're now moving on to information items. I would like to welcome David Slayton, the Executive Officer of the Superior Court, who will provide the update.
Thank you very much. I will share my screen just to share a few slides with you. And certainly I would welcome questions either along the way or at the end, as you may. I'm going to try to move through this fairly quickly, but make sure you get the information that I think you're interested in. As you know, the Superior Court adopted a new bail schedule that applied to nonviolent, non-serious misdemeanors and felonies and made it effective October 2023. So it's just been about almost a year and a half since the PARP, as we call it, went into effect. And I want to just give you an update on where that's going, and thanks for the invitation to do so. So just to kind of get everybody in the mindset of what we did here, as you know, the Constitution of California sets out what the purpose of bail is, and it basically a lot of times people will confuse what bail is for. A lot of times people think it's part of the punishment, but instead, bail is really meant to do two things in the Constitution. One is to ensure that the person who's arrested shows up for court. And then second of all, it's to reduce the risk to the public or victim safety. So that's, at the end of the day, what the court is trying to do, is to be consistent with the Constitution, making sure people show up and that we reduce the risk to the public and the victim. What the PARP, as I will call it, the pre-arraignment release protocols, did was they applied to non-1270.1. So when we say non-serious and non-violent misdemeanors and felonies, those are defined by the legislature. So there's a Penal Code 1270.1, which actually sets out what offenses are serious and violent. And the law requires that those people have to basically are allowed to, still under the law, post money bail, which we'll talk about in a minute. But for the non-serious, non-violent ones, that's what the court adopted the PARP to address. And rather than those being really their conditions of bail being set based upon monetary numbers, instead the court said that for those non-serious, non-violent offenses, that the conditions of release would be based upon the individual risk of that person to public safety and victim safety and their likelihood of returning to court. Again, somewhat, as you will recognize, consistent with the constitutional responsibilities. And these decisions that are made on non-serious, non-violent offenders, people who are arrested, is regardless of their wealth. So in other words, someone can't pay their way out of custody in these situations, but they also don't stay in custody based upon the fact that they don't have money. So you'll see how that works in a minute. But basically, each individual, is their determination of whether or not they stay in custody is based upon their individualized risk. And so there's a review done of those individuals. As a reminder, it's really important to know that the protocols really only apply once someone has been booked in the jail, and these protocols apply up until the time they're arraigned in court. So as you know, sort of looking at this chart, when someone's arrested, law enforcement officers have the discretion in the field to give them a citation and release them in the field, or they have the discretion to actually book them into custody. And the bail schedules, and particularly PARP, don't apply until someone's booked in the jail. So law enforcement retains all the discretion they had before, and they continue to have that. When someone gets to arraignment, where they show up into court, and at that point is when they've officially been charged by the district attorney or the city attorney, and they have counsel who've been appointed for them, either the public defender, alternate public defender, or some other counsel, and there's a district attorney or city attorney in there to advocate. At that point, the judge who's doing the arraignment can revisit all the conditions of bail that may have been set previously. So again, this is during that period of time where traditionally there would have been a document, the bail schedule, which would have applied, and no individual review of that that person who's arrested would have occurred. It would have been basically based upon the paper, and you'll see that here in just a second. Let me give you a little bit of data, and I'm gonna at the end of this presentation give you a link where we have all of this information in a dashboard online where you can look at this day by day if you would like. But one of the major impacts of PARP is that we have seen the number of bookings decrease by 17%. So this is, again, looking at law enforcement's behavior. They have the authority to do what they would like with someone in the field, to give them a citation or to book them. But what we've seen is that the bookings are down. And this is even, as you may know, there was at one point in time an emergency bail schedule that was put in place during COVID. There was, you see, that was rescinded in July of 2022. Then Arkady, which was a lawsuit filed in the Superior Court, reinstated the emergency bail schedule. So really the bookings are down even more than during those periods of time overall. What hasn't changed with the bail schedule is, again, those serious and violent offenses. If someone's arrested for one of those people, their release, whether they get out of jail previous to the arraignment, is based solely on their ability to pay, not an individual review of that person. So these are offenses such as domestic violence, murder, rape, and certain smash and grab robberies, where someone can actually put up a sum of money and get out of custody without regard to whether or not they are a risk to the public or to public safety. So that is controlled by statute. There's nothing the court can do to change that at this point. The court has been advocating for additional discretion in this area, but at this point, they still are able to pay money to get out. That represents about 41% of all the bookings in Los Angeles County since October of 2023. And this number has been pretty consistent month to month. So if you've seen me give this presentation before, I think it was around 42%. Now it's around 41%. But almost half of the arrests in Los Angeles County are for serious and violent offenses. And those people are able to, in a sense, put up a sum of money and pay their way out of custody pre-arraignment. And just worth noting, again, that 0% of those people are assessed for individual risk because of the way the money bail schedule works. Let me talk a little bit about, again, back to non-serious, non-violent offenses, how the bail schedule works under PARP. First of all, there are three categories in the bail schedule for those individuals. One, cite and release and book and release. These are conditions where if someone is booked into custody on one of these types of offenses, they are given a citation or documentation to tell them when to return to court. They're told not to commit new offenses, basically the very basic conditions of release, and then they are released from custody without the need to put up money bail. The second type is what we call magistrate review, and these are offenses where automatically a magistrate looks at that individual's history, things such, and you'll see what one of these looks like in a second, how many times they've been charged, how many times they've been convicted, what those convictions and charges are for, how many times they failed to appear, other types of information. And they're doing an individualized assessment of that particular individual to determine whether or not they're a risk to public safety of the victim or they're a risk of failure to appear. So what we've seen since October 2023 till yesterday is that about 35% of all the people booked into custody meet this cite and release and book and release number. So basically, by their offense, it's typically the lowest level offenses, misdemeanors and felonies. Those people are being, in a sense, booked into custody, and then once they're in custody, being released with those basic conditions. About 24% of all bookings countywide fall into this area of magistrate review, which means that they wait in custody for a magistrate to judge, basically, to review their individual situation and determine what the conditions of release need to be, or if the person can or cannot be released at all. It's worth noting that one of the things that this is somewhat of a new phenomenon in the bail schedule is that we created the ability for law enforcement to take any arrest and booking that is in that book and release and cite and release category and elevate it to magistrate review. So in essence, a law enforcement officer might know facts about the case or about the individual that, in fact, the court doesn't yet know about. And they can let the court know about those facts about the individual or the arrest, and they can ask for the magistrate to look at it. And so in essence, that person gets held waiting for the magistrate to review them. So we have seen that process of elevation happen at about 16% of the arrests. So law enforcement is taking advantage of that. That basically occurs by a phone call to a number with that staff from the court maintain 24/7, and those individuals can convey to the law enforcement officers can convey to those individuals information about the case or the individual. It's presented to the magistrate, and the magistrate decides from there what to do. So again, there is options for law enforcement to deal with those situations where that happens. Overall, just about half of all the bookings that have been since the beginning of PARP in October 2023 have been assessed for risk on an individual basis overall. So what happens at magistrate review when these persons are booked into custody and either are on a MR case type or the offense is elevated by law enforcement? Basically, the magistrate is reviewing basically things such as criminal history, previous failures to appear. They're not thinking about the individual's access to finances because, again, the person cannot pay their way out of custody, and they are not held in custody simply because they don't have access to money. Instead, they think about what are the appropriate non-financial conditions of release. So, for instance, maybe there are things such as electronic monitoring or orders to stay away from the victim or certain locations. There are things that the magistrate can put in as conditions, and they determine what are those appropriate conditions that would protect the public and the victim, as well as ensure the person shows back up to court. So this is a real example of a booking from October 2023. I'll just run through it really quickly to show you what you're looking at. This is what the magistrate gets to see. We are using a validated risk assessment, but also providing all the information to the magistrate. So I'm going to skip the score box for a second. I'll come back to it. I'm going to take you down on the left side of the screen to the risk assessment. You'll see that there are risk factors. So it's looking at things that we have validated in Los Angeles County to show that this person is a higher risk of likelihood of failure to appear or of committing new criminal activity or new violent criminal activity. And if you look in the middle, sort of the right side of the page, you'll see the information that's given to the magistrate. So for instance, at the top, you see the current arrest charges, a violation of PC 29800A1, a felony, a nonviolent felony. And then down below that, you'll see, excuse me, the pending charges that were filed. So this person had 2 cases pending against them at the time of the arrest, 2 misdemeanors. Down below that, you'll see a set of previous convictions against this individual over time, number of misdemeanors and a felony, some violent, some not violent. And then down at the bottom, you'll see the prior sentences that the person has been. So basically, this document you're looking at, as soon as a person is fingerprinted at jail anywhere in the county, this document is produced. We pull the data from our systems, all the countywide systems, and it produces this document. So a magistrate has access to this within a matter of minutes of a person being fingerprinted at the booking site. The individual, and I should point out the risk scores, back to the left side of the screen, the risk scores are then calculated based upon the information that's in this document. And as you see, for instance, FTA score, so this is failure to appear, and this shows that this person is a 6 out of 6 as far as risk to failure to appear. I should point out, I missed on the very far right side of the screen. These are the number of days that the person failed to appear in court. So you can see there's a long history of failure to appear, which basically shows you why the FTA score is 6 out of 6. That's the highest it can be. And our validation would say there's about a 98% chance this person will fail to appear in court. The next number over you see is NCA. That is new criminal activity. So this is a calculation of the risk score of this individual of their likelihood to commit new criminal activity. And you can see again, 6 out of 6, the highest score possible, which our validation would show this person has a significant chance of committing new criminal activity if released from custody. And then the third flag over on the right side is a score again out of 6. This is new violent criminal activity. So this is a score. What is the likelihood of this person, if released from custody, of going out and committing new violent criminal acts? And you can see this person's a 4 out of 6. So if you look through the person's history, you can kind of see why these scores are calculating the way they are. But this is what the magistrate has. And then you'll see that the decision was made by the magistrate after looking at all this, that the person would be held for further review. So in essence, this person could not be released from custody because I could not pay their way out or could not be released from custody, and they have to wait until the actual arraignment, which will happen within 48 hours, as long as court's meeting that day, 48 hours after their arrest. So basically, they're held, and you see the magistrate's decision, temporarily held until arraignment to protect victim or public safety and to assure their appearance at court, and that the magistrate found that there's no less restrictive alternative prior to arraignment. So that's an example of someone who's on the high score. I should point out for this offense, prior to PARP, the bail schedule for this individual would have said that $35,000 was the bail for this PC 29800 charge. So the person could have put up presumably $3,500 or less and paid their way out of jail. But also under county policies, if bail is set at less than $50,000, the individuals oftentimes get released. So this person would have been released or could have paid their way out. And as you can see, we would say that their risk scores would show they're a significant risk to the public. Instead, under PARP, this person did not get out of custody pre-arraignment. Here's a second example of another one of these scores that the judge would get. And you can see, a little bit lower risk scores here. But again, 2, 4, and 5, a lower risk of failure to appear because you can see they have no failures to appear. I can't see, something's hiding down there. I don't think they have failures to appear, but if not, maybe there's one down there. Actually, it's none. I'm looking at a different screen now to see that. But they have a fairly moderate to high risk of new criminal activity and a pretty high risk of new violent criminal activity. Again, this person was held by the magistrate pending further review. And then the last one I'll show you is, in essence, a first-time offender, a person arrested and booked into custody on I believe it's a DUI offense. They have no previous charges, no pending charges, no previous convictions, no prior sentences, no failure to appear. And you can see their risk score is a 110, which is the lowest score you could get. And so this person, the magistrate's decision was made to conditionally release that person. They were released from custody without having to pay anything, but they were also put on conditions by the magistrate. So let me give you a highlight of what's happening. These are, again, numbers through yesterday. When the magistrates are reviewing these offenses and these arrestees, what's happening overall is that about 94% of those people are being held for further review and arraignment. So they're not being released. And you might think to yourself, that's really high, and it is high. But it's just worth remembering that most of the other these are non-serious, non-violent offenses, but most of the other sort of lower level offenses have been sifted out along the way, either by them being the CR/BR type categories where they were released either in the field or released once they were booked into custody. These are really, in essence, the riskiest of those MRs. So it's probably not surprising that 94% are being held. And also that what we've seen is those are also the ones where the law enforcement officers are informing the magistrates that these people are risky. And so, as you can see, a significant portion of them are being being held. Only about 6% have been ordered released on conditions. And it's worth noting that at the time the magistrate orders that, sometimes law enforcement has already released them, which they have the authority to do. About 2% of those 6% were already released by the time the judge ordered that. Let's talk about the public safety benefits of PARP. I've got a couple of pieces of information. The first is that it's worth noting, this is not under PARP, it's worth noting that about 50% of those people charged with serious and violent offenses were people who were eligible for money bail, and they were medium to high risk, which means, again, just sort of put that into context, these are people arrested and booked into jail on things like robbery, murder, other types of serious and violent offenses, which are probably the offenses you think of when you think about public safety. 52% of those people were medium to high risk, which means there's a significant likelihood they will go out and commit new offenses, but they were eligible to pay their way out under the money bail schedule. As opposed to those that were under PARP, which are the next two statistics, of those that were ordered released by the magistrate, 86% of those were in the low risk category. And of those held temporarily, 70% of them had a medium to high risk score. So we look at this number, at least the last two, and say that it looks as if the magistrates are sifting and sorting them into the right categories based upon their risk scores. And the last piece of data I wanted to share with you, and this is a little bit complex. We're going to be releasing a report this month that looks at the first year of PARP data. But one of the things people ask about a lot and are concerned about is rebooking. So how often are people who are booked into custody released and then rebooked? And I think there's a perception out there that it happens all the time. What we did was we looked at how often were people who were released rebooked into custody on those bookings, and about 15% pre-PARP were rebooked into custody while they were still on bail. And under PARP, that's dropped to about 12%, which you might look at and say, well, that's a 3% drop. When we're talking about releasing more people, that's about a 20% drop in the number of people being rebooked, which we think shows that PARP is being successful. Would we love that number to be zero? Absolutely. But we think it's a success that the number is lower and significantly lower than what it was prior to PARP. So we view that as an increase in public safety. And so with that, here is the website that if you're interested in looking at the court's bail schedule, including the dashboard. Again, all the data that I presented to you, except for the last slide there, is available on this dashboard. And you can go to lacourt.org/bail. It's at the very bottom of the page. You'll see PARP dashboard, and you can look by date and over time at all kinds of different trends. So with that, I will stop sharing and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Slayton?
I have one, Penny.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. Great presentation, super informative. Question, magistrate review what effect, if any, is that having on the court system? Meaning you have to have had assigned a certain number of judges to do this. They were already busy or not. Can you explain? Thank you.
Yeah, great question. Thank you for asking. As you know, we have limited resources in the court, so it's always nice to think about what the impact is. Interestingly enough, we have actually seen the workload of the magistrates go down, but let me explain why. Prior to the PARP bail schedule going into effect, we had our magistrate unit looking at risk scores of people being booked, but the only option they had was to determine whether or not to release them on no conditions or to have them held. So there wasn't really, it wasn't really sort of sifting and sorting them into the right categories to really have a meaningful review of what is the right conditions to put in place and things like that. When we put PARP into place, because the way that the BRCR offenses work, we actually saw a decrease in the number of cases that they were looking at, but they're more meaningful review, as you can imagine, because they're actually, in a sense, getting to look and tailor their responses to those individuals. So we actually added 2 judges to the magistrate unit because we were afraid of the impact of the workload. But it's been manageable, and we're actually looking at those judges to make sure that they're being fully utilized. We're about to launch, for instance, a full countywide electronic search warrant system. They're going to be handling those as well. So bottom line is we've been able to absorb the workload, and it hasn't had a major impact. But thank you for asking.
Thank you. Marianne.
Thank you. I have seen this presentation before, and I appreciate it. Each time I hear it, I get a little bit more out of it. So thank you very much for continuing to educate us. I asked this question before when I saw you too. We're right on the edge of Ventura County. So are you communicating with Ventura County? Because it's so easy. It's literally across the street in some of our areas. So if you could explain if there's any communication between Ventura County and LA County, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, great question. Well, a couple of things. One, we are communicating what we're doing to counties all across California. There have been a couple of other counties that have also implemented a similar bail schedule, but most counties, including Ventura County, still use a money bail schedule where, in essence, the decision about whether or not someone's in custody pre-arraignment is all about their access to money and whether they can pay their way out. With regard to, I think your question is really regarding offenses and other things that they have, maybe just down across the street. One of the things, so the magistrates, when they get the report that I showed you, that's all LA County data specifically. And so magistrates in their initial review are making decisions based upon failures to appear, new criminal cases, other things like that happened in LA County. But what happens is, let's just say, for instance, that a magistrate decides to hold someone or a magistrate decides to release someone. Well, it's really more if they decide to release them. If they're held, they're generally held because of issues that have been in LA County. But if the magistrate decides to release them, before they're actually released, court staff do run a criminal history check to see if there are other offenses in other counties or other states that did not show up on the magistrate's original report. So, for instance, if there was a pending case or a conviction in Ventura County, we wouldn't see it originally. The magistrates wouldn't. But the court staff on the backside, when they ran that report to check before they issued the conditional release, would find that. And what happens is they then notify the magistrate, hey, just so you know, there's a conviction for X, Y, or Z in Ventura County or a pending case or whatever. Would you like to reconsider your decision? And of course, the magistrate can say, yeah, no, I'm still good with the conditional release, but they get to consider that as part of the review before the conditional release is processed. So that's how that's being brought in. So bottom line is the answer is yes, we're considering what's going on in the other counties around the state. The only, I'll just, full transparency, the only time when that wouldn't happen, and it happens even in LA County this way as well, is if the person was arrested on a case yesterday, for instance, but there's not been a case filed, then there's no way for the court to know that's out there. And so one of the things that's really important is this the process for law enforcement, should they know, I arrested this guy yesterday for the same offense. If they notify the court of that through that process of elevation from a BRCR offense to magistrate review, or if they want to let a magistrate know that even for a case that's in magistrate review, they can do that. So we rely a lot on law enforcement to communicate if there are special circumstances that the court wouldn't know about because it's happened really recently. We wait a little bit on the DA's office or the city attorney's office to file those cases. And so if we can't see them there, we obviously can't know that something happened. So that's where law enforcement plays a key role. And I think they're using it based upon the statistics.
Thank you. Eniko.
Thank you, Mr. Slayton. I have two questions. The first is the implementation of these pre-arrangement protocols financially motivated?
I think the answer is no. As far as if you're asking about the court's financial situation, the answer is no. At the end of the day, the court's concerned about the constitutional responsibilities, but maybe you may have other questions.
So if these were not implemented, would it cost more money, obviously, to keep these people in than to release them? So
obviously, yeah.
1 point on the system overall, right?
Yeah. So one of the things that's obviously an issue is jail population. As you may know, in Los Angeles County, the jails are full. And the county certainly struggles with that. That was not a motivating factor for the court. What I will say, it's worth noting that the jail population has not changed that much. The total population has not changed that much since PARP. It's down slightly. But interestingly enough, it's the people who are being held that look different. Higher risk, moderate risk people are being held more, lower risk people are out. At the end of the day, what was happening prior to PARP is at some point, the sheriff can only hold so many people in custody. So they're releasing people to make room for others. And so if we have low risk people who are in custody simply because they can't afford to pay the bail money to get out, then they're holding a bed that maybe someone else who's higher risk could take if that was a decision that was made. And so I think to the degree that we're seeing impacts on jail population, it's it's slightly down, but it's mainly based upon who's being held in jail versus the pre versus post HARP implementation. Does that answer your question, Anika?
Yes. Maybe we should think about more prisons if we need them, right? As opposed to, sometimes letting people go who shouldn't be let go. Then my second question is about the first graph you showed us. It was about the bookings being down, right?
Yes.
How about citations? If booking, how about citations?
That's a great question. We at the court level don't get that information. So law enforcement issues the citation directly in the field. We don't know how many they're issuing. We obviously know if those cases get filed on. So we would know filing numbers, which are not up and are, I would say, at least on the felony level, are pretty consistent, pre versus post PARP. But as far as the number of citations, individual law enforcement agencies would have that data. We don't have that at the court because, the citation is handled outside of court.
Yes, and we all know that the police officers have a lot of discretion when they encounter somebody and whether they issue a citation or decide to book them. And
Correct.
I'm just completely, making this up right now, but maybe in the moment, they already know that this person will be released immediately. So it's not even worth booking them. Just give them a citation. Obviously, it depends on what they encounter. Now, could the bookings be down because there are a lot less officers on the streets?
Could be. I don't know I don't know whether, by looking at the data and the graph itself, there's a pretty clear break at October 2023. So unless there was some other related shift in the number of officers at that exact time, I would think that there's at least some impact apart. But of course, fewer officers means fewer bookings. That, of course, is a natural thing that would happen if there were fewer officers.
I think that's an important point for us to remember. Thank you.
Thank you.
Frozen? I don't know.
Sorry, I was frozen. Was anybody else?
No.
Oh, sorry. I lost everybody. So have all the questions been answered?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I don't know what happened with my computer. So, David, thank you very much for coming on today and talking to all of us. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And President Sylvester, I would just make the offer that I always make in these presentations, which if I know you all represent various governmental groups, if there's anything we can do, any presentations we could give, we're happy anytime to do so. So if you need other information, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you
Thank you
so
so
much.
much.
Thank
All
you,
right,
David.
now we move on to Southern California Edison. I would like to introduce Carla Diaz Sales. Are you here, Carla?
Yes, I'm here. Can you see me?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. It's
All
great
right.
to meet everyone.
So please go ahead.
Okay. Josh, are you sharing your screen? Fantastic. Well, thank you again, everyone, for inviting us to join you today. We received Terry's email specifically asking us to address outage communications, particularly during planned outages. So we've developed some high-level talking points to do so. But before that, I thought I'd start with an introduction since this is my first time meeting many of you. Next slide, please. Here's our top level agenda introductions. I'm going to talk a little bit about roles of my team. We'll go into day-to-day outage communications. And then if we have any interest, happy to also talk about public safety power shutoffs, which I know have been top of mind for many of our communities, and then take any questions. So just to begin, again, my name is Carla Diaz Sales. I am new to Southern California Edison. I started at the company a week after the windstorms, wildfires on January 13th as the new Vice President of Local Public Affairs. Our department is really responsible for relationship management with all of the local government entities across our service area. And you have had, Josh, can we go to the next slide? Thank you. You've had outreach from many of my government relations managers who have served as your liaisons. Josh Torres, who has been the lead, apologies. Excuse me, sorry, my excuse me. Josh Torres has been lead with the City of Malibu. He was just appointed principal manager overseeing the region. You also have met Rebecca Lansing, on our government relations team. And lastly, I'm so sorry, Josh, apologies. Can you jump in really quickly? I need to.
Sure thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no worries. The last member of our team is Adrian Garcia. So, I know many of you are familiar with the fact that, we do have a vacancy in this region at the moment. So we are, covering each of your cities on an interim basis. Hopefully you all saw my email last night. On Friday of last week, we posted the vacancy officially to try to backfill this position permanently. So we're really happy to announce that. And we're hoping that you as community leaders, if you have any recommendations, if you know of people that would be good candidates, people that are, qualified doing government relations or community outreach or similar fields, please send them our way. We would love to have a conversation with them.
Thank you, Josh. Sincere apologies, everyone. I'm getting over a little cold and just got my throat there. One of the key pieces I did want to flag on this slide is I know that there's been quite a bit of transition. Our team went through some transition starting in October, so you have experienced some shifts. As Josh just mentioned, we are looking to hire a permanent person to serve as your point of contact in this role, which is why Rebecca and Adrian are considered interim. As soon as we have hired someone full-time, we're hoping that it's someone from the area that knows the communities, which I think will really help to serve as that liaison and advocate in those communities. We will communicate that to you all and make sure that you have a time to meet this person and engage with them directly. I did want to touch on the role of our government relations managers. Our team is really here to work closely with you all, answer questions that come up, and again, serve as that liaison into the company across a variety of different topics. Any questions that you as government might have. I do want to note, because I think that there has been some questions on this, we are not our customer service team. We work closely with that team. So if at any point, we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like, you have questions that go into the customer service team, I highly recommend copying your government relations manager, so that gives us visibility over the issue. And again, our team can in turn follow up with our customer service agency and make sure that we are able to flag and elevate any of the concerns that either constituents or that members of your organizations are reaching out to us to resolve. Finally, I do want to also note that separate from the customer service team and our government relations team, you do have an account manager that's specifically assigned to you in our customer service organization, and that is also a lead person on any questions that might come up for you as a customer of Southern California Edison, billing, new service, city accounts. So any of those types of questions that you as a customer might have related to the city, you also have a lead staff person. So multiple points of contact there. If at any point you're unsure who those folks are, again, our team is happy to be there to respond to any of those questions and serve as that internal liaison. Josh, let's go to the next slide. Shifting into some questions in terms of outage communication. Our outage communication team, we've invited a colleague to join us, is going to walk you through what that process looks like. But again, I did just want to flag here that when an outage occurs in your neighborhood, it could be for multiple reasons. It could be because something has happened, like a tree has come down on a line and there's something unplanned. If that's the case, you know, those folks will start to call in, what's happening with my power. This is where, again, making sure, I know our team members reached out to all of you yesterday to make sure that you have that contact information, email, phone number, top of mind, because reporting the outage to our outage communication team is absolutely the first step. Our government relations managers do not have line of sight over when an outage occurs, particularly a smaller outage. So we won't know that that outage is happening, and that's where having, you know, that the member of your team who's reporting that copy us will allow us to then get engaged and continue to support internally. In terms of customers who are reaching out to you with questions, we do have an external outage map. We have an app that you can send customers to take a look as to whether this was a planned outage or if there's any information available. You can also, again, report that the outage directly through our outage communication team. Josh, we can go to the next step. Thank you. So here's the overview of the several types of outages, and I'm going to have my colleague from our customer outage team walk you through some of these pieces.
Thank you for that, Carla. So good morning. My name is Luis Lara. I'm with the Outage Management and Communications team. And part of our role is to engage and serve as a liaison with our major customers, our cities and county governments on all things outage related. So if you have a question with respect to maintenance outage that's coming up, a repair outage or an unplanned outage event, or even a PSPS event, we can step in that role and provide those information to you. Let's see, I'm getting some. Okay, I think we're okay now. So outages. So what types of outages are most likely to impact your constituents? So they really fall into 4 or 5 categories. primarily our maintenance outages. Maintenance outage is just that. Oh, I'm getting some sound feedback.
Yeah, whoever's iPad, Kate Anderson, could you please go on mute?
So our maintenance outages are literally just that, right? We're performing some maintenance project out in our communities. We know the scope of the project. We know which customers are going to be de-energized, and we have a really good idea on the duration of that outage event. So for those projects, we will push out advanced notification to our customers that will be impacted. For repair outages, also known as unplanned outage events. Now, in this type of scenario, this just happens out of the blue. It could be a vegetation that makes contact with overhead equipment, animals making contact with overhead equipment. It could also be a car hitting a pole, which we call a CHP. This happens quite often. So in those events, because we are responding to an active event, we will not have the luxury to send out advanced notifications. However, for those customers that have been de-energized or impacted by a repair outage or unplanned outage event, and are signed up for digital notifications, we will push out digital notifications to those customers. Now here I do want to take a pause. Please help us spread the word that we need to have our customers have their updated contact information at all times, including yourself for your own organization. Let's make sure that we have your updated contact information so that when we need to push out notifications to you, they're delivered to the proper team and to those constituents that need them. Now, there are occasions where we have emergency outages. We have to take an emergency outage. And that could be maybe a quasi-maintenance, quasi-repair outage. A good example of this could be we have fuel crews that are patrolling a circuit and they identify a leaking transformer. In that instance, that presents a safety hazard. So we need to jump on that project right away and rectify that situation. So in those instances, we may not have the luxury of time because of the safety consideration. So, but we do need to get on it right away. So we'll start to prepare the repair outage. If we have 24 hours, that's great. Many times we don't. We just have several hours to prepare and get that situation rectified. Again, once we start that emergency outage, we may not have the luxury of time to send out notifications in advance, but we will continue to update those customers that have been de-energized because of that emergency event. Our PSPS events or public safety power shutoffs, these are proactive de-energizing events when there is a significant weather condition presenting a significant threat to our community. This is when we proactively shut off certain segments of circuits or complete circuits to preserve the integrity of our community safety and the grid as a whole. And there are also instances where public agencies will request that Edison shut off power proactively. Now, this typically happens, or most likely, during when we have live fire events. CAL FIRE will reach out to Edison, they'll use the BAT phone and say, hey guys, we have crews working in this area, there are overhead lines, we need you to proactively shut off power in this region. In that instance, we will proactively shut off power. There will be no notification sent to customers because now we're working in response and in coordination with our public safety agencies out in the field. Now, in the next slide, I do want to jump in on what happens behind the scenes. I do want to pull back the veil a little bit. So let's go ahead and jump on that. So for our maintenance outage process, what goes into this process? So first thing, if we know that we need to do a pole replacement, we look for opportunities to bundle that work. If we're going to replace that pole, can we also do a transformer replacement? Can we do some conductor replacement? What else can we bundle into that project to reduce outage fatigue for that community? Now, while we know that this project can happen if we are able to bundle work, can we reduce the scope or footprint of that outage to more narrowly to reduce the impact of customers that are going to be de-energized? Again, with a more narrow focused effort on delivering the project and successfully delivering the project without impacting as many customers. Also, the duration of the outage. If we know we're going to do a pole replacement and we're going to include a transformer replacement, will that grow the duration of that outage for customers? If it is, then maybe we need to reconsider that. If we can do it at the same time, then you know what? It's worth just moving forward with that type of project. Another thing we do consider is the demographic makeup of that particular outage. So we need to consider, if we're going to have a 6, 8, 10-hour outage, who will be impacted? Do we have critical care customers that will be impacted? Do we have medical baseline customers that will be de-energized? Do we have a hospital that will be de-energized? In those instances, we will make every effort to proactively engage with that customer base to give them a heads up. Hey, customer, we're looking to de-energize. We'll work with the hospital if need be to prepare for that type of outage event. Now, for most of our customers that are signed up for digital notifications, whether that's voice message, text, or email, they will receive a digital outage notification approximately 10 days in advance. Once that maintenance project has begun the day of, if we receive any updates from the field crews and they need to extend it by an hour or whatever it is, whatever updates are delivered by the field crew, we will provide those that will funnel up to our notification system, and then we will push those out to those customers being impacted. Now, on the repair outage side, what happens behind the scenes of that? Let's say it's a car hitting a pole, because that happens quite often. So we do have automation embedded in our circuits. So let's say the circuit is de-energized or relays because of a car hitting a pole. In that instance, the circuit itself will begin to test, let's say, the front half. Okay, from the circuit breaker to RCR 123, can we restore power? The system will test itself. If it's able to hold power, then we'll keep power on. And then they'll test the rear half of the circuit. If it's not able to hold power for whatever reason, that's where the fault is located, then the circuit will remain shut off. From there, we transition into another process where we have our grid ops team and our field resources working together to begin to test different sections of the line to begin to narrow down that specific outage footprint. Now, here's where I like to give a really solid rule of thumb for our customers. If you've been de-energized for an unplanned outage event, give us about 90 minutes. By about the 90-minute mark, we should have already begun our isolation procedures and reduced that outage footprint to the smallest footprint possible. And now, typically, anything beyond 90 minutes of an outage, of a repair outage, those customers are likely to remain de-energized until repairs are completed. So really good rule of thumb, so that if you do receive an inquiry from one of your constituents, hey, I just lost power, what's going on, what's happening, when is my power going to be restored? Good rule of thumb, give Edison about 90 minutes so they can begin their isolation procedures and restoration efforts and begin reducing that outage footprint. Now, when customers reach out to you and say, hey, I lost power, one thing I do want to stress and highly recommend is redirect the customers to SCE.com so that they can notify SCE that they've lost power. Now, you're probably asking, okay, well, Edison, don't you know when customers have lost power? Yes. Yeah, generally within the first couple of minutes, we know which section of circuits have been de-energized, have been impacted. However, when customers provide us specific details about their outage experience, a couple of things happen on our end. Customers will let us know, hey, I heard a loud boom behind my backyard, or I'm in the warehouse and I heard a loud boom just outside my front door, whatever it is. That starts giving us indication of, okay, you know what, let's, instead of running a whole search of the entire circuit or half of a circuit, this is where customers are focusing their impact. This is what they're saying, that they're hearing things out in the field. So it helps us speed up the testing and isolation procedures on our end. Okay, and it also puts a digital marker, if you will, on our side that these customers are very much impacted and de-energized and are on our radar, if you will. Okay. Again, one more thing I want to highlight for you as an organization or for your constituents, please update contact information. It is incredibly important. Now, where do we go for information? Now, let's jump over to the next slide. Now, one thing I do want to share with you is our new consolidated outage map. Now, this outage map is a very dynamic experience. You can enter an address for your business, for your home, whatever it is, and once you process it, it'll bring up what outages are expected in that area as far as maintenance outages, if there are any live outage events, what's happening, what is the status of those, and if available at that time, the cause will be reflected there as well. Now, I do want to let you know that there is about a 15 to 20 minute lag time between what was reported on the field and what is being reflected on the map. So there is about a 20 minute lag time. So just to let you know. Now, during a PSPS event, this map can become very critical for many of our customers that are de-energized or being impacted, because it will also reflect customer support resources. So if your constituents are impacted by PSPS events, this is a good place to go for information to find out where a community resource center or community resource vehicle are located for additional details or support during a PSPS event. Now, let's jump over to the next slide, because I do want to talk about, what happens if a constituent reaches out to you. So one thing that we want to strongly recommend is confirm that the outage has been reported to SCE. Again, very important that we have that customer, tick marked on our side that they have lost power. If they're not sure if they haven't connected with SCE, they can report the outage on sce.com/outage, or they can reach out to via phone number on 800-611-1911. Now, this 1911 number is an automated line where they can just tap in punch in a few numbers, and it'll do the whole process for them pretty quickly. Now, if you want to find out what's the status of an outage, a repair outage that's happening within your own geographical boundaries, again, I would like to recommend that you reach out to our outage map. And also for your constituents, you can redirect them to go to the outage map for updated information on there. It'll be continuously refreshed and updated through the evolution of that outage event. Now, if you, as an organization, as a city, county, have any additional questions, or would like a deeper dive into what is actually impacting my community, the outage communications team was created to support those needs for you. Now, our call center, they do a great job of what they do. However, our outage communications team has the tools and resources to really perform a deeper dive into what is actually happening. We can bring up an outage map to really identify, this is the community, this is the impact area, this is the specific fault location, this is what we're looking at, and provide those details to you. Now, our outage communications team is available to you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We always have someone on duty to support your inquiry. Now, I'm going to give you our email address, because the best way to get in contact with our outage communications team is via email. You can reach us at sceoutage@sce.com. That's sceoutage@sce.com. Now, I do want to give a little caveat with this email address. This email address is strictly for your organization's use. It is not available for residential use. We want to redirect our residential customers to the outage map and self-reporting on self-service options on SCE.com. This additional layer of deeper dive of outage information is available to you as a city, as a county, as an organization that needs a deeper dive into how to better support your constituents or emergency needs within your own community. Okay. Now, I know that our public affairs team has sent out this information to you already in advance. So look for that email. All our contact information is in there as well. Another service that we do from Edison is for those outages that have now begun to exceed that 90-minute mark and are reflecting customers of over 150 customers impacted. SCE will push out a notification to that city, letting you know, city, this is the outage, this is what's happening, this is what we're seeing. Okay, so just to give you a heads up, again, please help us maintain your updated contact information so that when these notifications do come out, they're being directed to the proper team or the proper personnel on your side that needs to see this information. Okay, so let's jump over to the next slide. Now, don't worry, I only have 62 more slides to go, and we're almost there. Now, outage information resources are available to our customers. Again, sce.com/outage is the go-to place for all of your constituents, even yourself, to keep updated on what's happening in your community. The outage map, now just between you, me, and the post, the outage map is undergoing a revamp on our side. So you'll see some changes coming up in the near future. Now, again, between you, me, and the post. So let's just keep that between us. So in the next couple of months, you'll see a revamped with maybe a little more streamlined information, just to make it more user-friendly for our constituents. Okay. So again, for our customers, your constituents that have residential customers that have an outage or want to repair an outage, they can reach out directly on 800-611-1911, and they can go onto sce.com. Now, we are also, along with this deck, we're gonna include a link to really understanding and preparing for an outage event. We have a wealth of information on SCE.com on how to prepare for outages and how your constituents can prepare for outages, but this is one link that you can help disseminate within your own constituency. Now let's jump over to the next slide.
Oh, Luis, can I just add really quickly? We designed this fact sheet. So Luis and I worked together to develop this fact sheet as a tool that you guys can give to your constituents, right? When they're calling saying, I don't know where to go, I don't understand the SCE outage process. So, and there's also information on the back side of this fact sheet about resiliency measures, right? Backup batteries, the medical baseline program, solar plus storage. So it's really a tool that you can use to help educate your residents. So I strongly encourage when they call, send them that fact sheet.
Thank you for that, Josh. So now let me turn it back to Carla.
Fantastic. Thank you, Luis. I appreciate that. I did want to touch a little bit on the public safety power shutoff experience, because what Luis just shared with you is obviously our typical communications during what we call blue sky, when everything is planned. We either have a planned outage or we're responding to a repair in the community. What I did want to touch on, just to make sure that there isn't lack of clarity, some of these tools did not work for us during the January windstorm. The January windstorm that we experienced was the largest public safety power shutoff event that Southern California Edison has had to date. And I wanted to just apologize to you all, because the customer experience was not what it should have been. Our tools did not work. Our website went down. Our outage map went down. The tools that you are used to relying on as government partners were not helping you when all of the customers were coming and reaching out to you all. And for that, we acknowledge that this was something that we need to do better. You heard Luis touch on it. We are taking our lessons learned from the January event. We are retooling our systems and making sure that we have capacity to be able to support you all during a windstorm event like that, now that we have had that experience. So I did just want to note that, because obviously everything that he just outlined is when we don't have 14 million folks who are in our service area rushing to our website, which really did put a strain on our system. During the January windstorms, we did pivot to send daily updates to customers. We were manually putting together Excel spreadsheets that we were sending to you all, again, recognizing that it was a difficult experience all around. We know that public safety power shutoffs are incredibly disruptive for customers and for your constituents. However, as we found during the January windstorm event, it is an effective way for us at this time to continue to prevent potential ignitions. During our January windstorm, we found over 70 instances where vegetation was in the lines or there was some kind of equipment damage, and we believe that these shutoffs likely prevented many of those circumstances from starting a fire. We also know that it was a pretty active PSPS season this fall. And so it's something that our team is currently working to figure out how we can identify ways to lessen the impact on customers and on you all. As cities, we're looking at everything from segmentation. We are looking at our plans to continue hardening across the board. But again, I did just want to touch on this from a very high level, because everything that Luis just shared with you did not work as it should have during the PSPS event in January. So I did just want to make that clarification. If you would like me to go through some more general public safety power shutoff high level, I'm happy to. I think it's something that you all are well aware of. So I did just want to offer that up, or we can open it up for questions.
I think we'd probably like to open it up for questions. And if I may start, you haven't said anything about undergrounding and what are the plans for the future? Because so many of us, did lose power, and we want to know what we can look forward to.
Sure. Thank you for that question, President Sylvester. We right now we are really focused on the rebuilds in both Malibu and in Altadena following the wildfires. Undergrounding is one of the options that we're looking at. As you all may have experienced, since 2018, when there was a large wildfire, and we really shifted some of our focus developing what's called wildfire mitigation plans that the California Public Utilities Commission requires us to submit. We have, across our service area, replaced more than 6,100 miles of overhead electrical wire with what we call covered conductor, which is insulated lines to prevent sparks. Where possible, we look at undergrounding as a tool. We've also installed weather stations to allow us to micro-target those weather stations. The way they work is, and again, being new to this space, it was one of the things that I found is probably difficult for customers to understand at times, because they might look outside and say, I don't have any wind outside, and yet I am being impacted by this public safety power shutoff. So our weather monitors that are now located across our service area provide us real in-time wind speeds that our scientists are able to evaluate and understand where those thresholds align. If you have a bare wire, so a wire that has not been hardened, that is going to have a different threshold for shutting off the power that something like covered conductor would have. That would have a different threshold than undergrounding. I do want to, on the topic of undergrounding, though it is something that we are looking at, unless the entire circuit is underground, any part of that circuit that still has bare wire would then subject that whole line to the threshold of the lowest point, meaning if it's bare wire, then that threshold would be applied even though there is undergrounding in certain other parts of the circuit. So it does not directly respond to specifics, President Sylvester, because it really, the undergrounding pieces that we're looking at are right now, we're looking at prioritizing high fire risk areas. As I mentioned, right now we are doing a lot of work around the recent wildfire areas in Malibu, for example. We had just finished our general rate case, so we were looking to see what work had been planned over the next 2 to 3 years that we're able to pull forward, since some of that work was in the burn scars in that high fire risk area. But it is something that we continue to do, look to plan, where can we bring this tool in, where is it appropriate, where can we actually do the undergrounding. There's places that it doesn't always work.
And Carla, we still...
So can you give us, because we all live in a very high fire hazard severity zone, all the cities on this call. So are you going to, is SCE going to give us a timetable of what is going to be done?
Sure.
For
so
our areas?
the way that our timetable works, and please let me know if you know this already or not. Again, I'm new to this space, so I don't know how much has already been shared with you all. But because we are regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission, every 2 to 3 years, we put a plan together of what work we are planning to do. So we go 2 to 3 years at a time. That work then gets approved by the commission. Once that work is approved, that's the work that we are then able to implement. So right now, and Josh, you can jump in.
We're pending, right? So we submitted our application a couple years ago, and it did include a substantial amount of undergrounding, but we still have not received a decision from the Public Utilities Commission. So it is really important that we get a favorable decision from the Public Utilities Commission in order to get that budget that we need in order to underground. If you are interested in providing comments to the Public Utilities Commission, we can certainly walk you through that process. Just reach out to your government relations manager and they can let you know how you could submit your comments to the Public Utilities Commission.
So we should be directing our questions to the PUC.
Yeah, and just to follow up with that, so every 2 to 3 years is this plan, so we will start planning then for the next 2 to 3 years. So whereas we don't have a long-term plan, let's say for your city, here's what you're going to see over the next 10 years, we do have a 2 to 3 year plan of what should be expected and what was included in our plan for your service area, which again, we're waiting on approval for right now. We're hoping it comes through anytime.
Okay, thank you. All right, Anika.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. I just wanted to make a comment and a question. First comment is that this is public and recorded meeting, just FYI. The question I had, you mentioned that after your communication system failed during the fires, you let the cities know directly what was happening with memos. Hidden Hills never received anything. So we were in the dark pretty much, which was very concerning because we were incredibly concerned and you know, being without power is very difficult for everybody, basically. So my question would be, what kind of changes have you implemented since the fires that would upgrade your communication systems in emergency situations? And how are you going to plan on notifying your partnering agencies and cities moving forward?
Absolutely. So one of the primary ways that our jurisdictions, our cities gain this information is that they have access, our city managers, or it's usually some kind of planning director, has access to our public safety. It's a portal. And this, again, is for jurisdictions directly. So we're happy to work with you directly to see who from your city has access. It's something that during the windstorm, we held a couple of elected official briefings. We made that system available more broadly because many of our elected officials weren't aware that there were members of their cities that had access to this portal. This portal is part of what was, again, when our website went down, usually you get information, outage maps internally that look a little bit different from what the public sees outside. So this system was also not effectively working. So our teams took all of the information that we were receiving manually, we're building Excel spreadsheets, and we're sending it out to those contacts that were listed in the portal. So again, happy to work with your team. I know Rebecca has been in touch with you recently to see who from your team is on our site. And if we don't have anyone for some reason, happy to work with you to make sure you gain access to that. So the first piece on our side was really looking at capacity, because clearly capacity went down on our website. So everyone who was coming to our website from information wasn't able to get it. The next thing our team did was completely rebuilt that map internally so that we could get it up and running. I mean, to rebuild something in 3 days for us was really quite incredible, but it really allowed us to think through how do we get this information out faster. And then one of the things that now we're looking at is how do we improve the customer experience so that that information is also more readily available for them in these processes. And I want to share with you the way that my customer service counterparts explain it to me. The way that we're hoping to get to is if anyone's used like the Domino's Pizza app, where I use this as a visual, which made sense to me because it gives you more of a clear understanding of where things are in the process of repair, right? So when I'm on the app, it tells you, okay, we've started making your pizza. Now it's in the oven. Now there's a driver. That is the type of improvement that our customer service team is looking to build out, again, directly in response to some of the information that was missing in January. So they're looking to figure out how to tool that so that our customers have a better sense. Okay, they've identified that there's a repair that's needed or there's an outage, but where are they? Have they deployed the car? Is there someone on site looking at it? Again, to give our customers more tools as they're looking at outage and trying to plan the best they can for when power will be resumed.
So let me understand this clearly. You stated that there's this portal that a representative can log into and check what is going on. Well, yeah. I don't think that's going to work in an emergency, because in an emergency, the city is under a lot of stress and there's a million things going on. We have to keep our residents safe. And since you're the source of information, it would make a lot more sense for you to push something out to us immediately, as opposed to us trying to figure out, is it going to happen now or what's going on then? Should we check in every hour during an ongoing emergency or every half an hour to get the updated information that is applicable to us? So you see, since you're the source of information, you're the holder of information, you pushing it out to us when it's applicable to us in an emergency, that would make a lot more sense as opposed to us checking every 5 minutes if there's an update on the map.
Apologies. We do have, whoever's on that, again, whoever your contact is that's on that portal does get an email when those shutoffs come. So in order for us to trigger the public safety power shutoff, again, when something is planned. So for example, with the January windstorms, when we knew in advance that the winds were coming and they were going to reach these thresholds, we start letting our government partners know 3 days in advance. That is done via an email, again, to whoever is in our system from your jurisdiction as the lead. So they are getting those emails proactively in terms of when those shutoffs are happening. Let's say the wind speeds change and now it's not going to be 9 a.m., but we anticipate the wind is going to hit at noon. They will also get another email update that's going to, that your circuits are going to be impacted. So that push is happening, again, to the best of our ability, because the public safety power shutoffs are based on weather and real-time assessment, again, from our climate scientists. This isn't, an AI system. It's real people who are looking at things real time and making those decisions.
So we'll check on our end, but I hope you guys check on your end too to make sure that you have updated information for all the cities that you cover. So we cover from both.
Absolutely. And again, I think that's something we can take back and work directly with you on to make sure, are the appropriate people in our system? If not, let's get them on, let's get them trained. Let's make sure that, again, the right people have the information that they need during an emergency. That is absolutely a takeaway for us, something we can work with you on.
And Carla, I can add, we do on an annual basis in advance of PSPS season, so usually during the summer, push out an email to all of our local government partners just to ask them, hey, are there any changes, right? Do you have a new emergency services director? Do you have a new fire chief? But we do historically have a low participation rate. So if you as council members can help and city managers can help remind your emergency personnel to keep an eye out for that and respond to it, even if there's no changes, it's good for us to know that, hey, our information is still accurate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you guys for being here. And thank you, Joshua, for coming to our city council meeting and talking. And, as I mentioned at the council meeting, this isn't an attack on you guys personally. And Carla, I really appreciate you acknowledging the scope of the situation in January. So that's kind of my comment portion, that it's moving the liability really from like Edison to the customers. But the question and what I'm hoping to see improvement on is that we have places in Agoura, and I think there's places in Malibu, Calabasas, Westlake Village that don't have any cell service. And so these people are in the dark, literally and figuratively. And I understand there's, you send out notifications so people can plan for PSPS events, but like 3 or 4 days of being in the dark and without any means of communication because the whole network is down. And so I was just wondering if there's anything that you guys are working on to improve the ability for communications to even be received for some of these residents.
And thank you for raising that, Jeremy. I think it's something, again, we've put together this cross-departmental team to look at this. And a big part of the work on this is making sure, and this is where our team on the government relations side is playing a role to feed in and say, here are the questions and concerns that are top of mind for our government partners that we want to feed into this work stream to try to figure out how to solve. Your question is one that even in my short time, I've heard now a couple times and is certainly top of mind in terms of how we can, work closely with you all, work closely with our telcos. I don't have an answer for you yet, but it's something I'd like to continue to work through because it is something that I hear very clearly is a big concern. Residents, obviously, if the power goes out in the middle of the night and they don't have power, then how are they going to get those critical notifications? So it is something that's top of mind. That we've already made our work streams aware. I don't have an answer again yet, but would love to come back as we do have updates on that specific piece.
Right. Thank you. I really appreciate it because I mean it's complicated because it's different utilities, but it's the folks that have no cell phone service without power is really what I'm concerned about. So thank you.
Of course.
Thank you. Marianne?
Hi, thank you. I kind of want to jump on Jeremy's question there. You know, it is not just the cell service, it's also internet. And you talked about during maintenance outages that you notify critical partners in the community. Are you doing that same thing with the PSPSs? And how is it determined who is a critical? Because our schools aren't always being notified or being part of the solution for communications and backup power, urgent cares, other things in our community are kind of literally left in the dark about this. And that's another big component. So how do you determine who your critical partners are? And is that same thing determined from the maintenance outage also into the PSPSs? So that's kind of my first question. And then I wanted to ask a second question on weather stations.
Sure. So on your first station, and council member, thank you for the question. I know we've been in touch, and particularly the impacts to Malibu High School most recently in the recent wind events were really disruptive for students. So figuring out a solve for our schools is actually one of the ways that we started raising the concerns, knowing that, again, not all of the schools, as we understand it, have been able to get access to generators, and we're trying to figure out what can we do. Is it segmentation, again, which is a more longer term solve, but in the short run, what is the solve, knowing that, we could be in another dry weather season this year. So what can we do in the short run, again, particularly around some of those institutions? So that is something that we hope to be able to come back to you on, because schools are top of mind, and particularly Malibu High School was one of the ones that we heard early on, and were able to jump in and start to raise those concerns for our team. Luis, do you want to chime in? I am not sure I can get you the response if he doesn't have it, in terms of how we determine who are these critical partners that we're making aware, unless, Luis, you have a sense of that.
Sure. So, well, let me jump back to if a school is being impacted by a maintenance outage, please leverage our team. Allow us that opportunity to jump in that space for you. One thing that we really want to support on our side is we want to prevent any intrusion or encroachment on instructional periods. So if there's a maintenance outage and for whatever reason our system did not catch it, that was a school or whatever it is, please reach out to the outage team. We can help lobby on your behalf to get it rescheduled either to a weekend or overnight, or something that will not impact instructional periods. Now, for our critical care partners or our public safety partners, these are typically those customers that are identified as a hospital, a nursing care facility, fire station, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this determination is made by the Public Utilities Commission, and so that's their designation that we have identified, that we've adopted. If there's a public safety partner that we have not identified for whatever reason, please let us know. Please elevate that to us so that we can make the appropriate corrections on our end. Now, there's another component to that is our critical care customers. These are those customers that have a heightened medical need for power. For those customers, that customer base, it is incredibly important that we have them identified on our side as a medical baseline or critical care customer. Why? So during a PSPS event or an emergency event, when we push out notifications to customers, if a notification comes back as undelivered to a critical care customer, what we'll do is we'll take that information, we'll send it over to, pass it over to a sister team. They'll make another attempt to connect with that critical care customer. If we're still not able to engage with that customer or perform a wellness check, if you will, then we'll send it out now to a field service representative to literally perform a door knock on that customer's home. So again, there are aspects that we want to do to better support our medical baseline customers. However, we need their support to let us know whom they are. And I know that many customers don't really think about Edison unless two things happen. You have to pay the bill, or you go to flip the switch and light doesn't come on. Both instances, not the best touch points with Edison. However, if we can get these customers identified early and in advance, then that'll help us on the notification front.
Okay. Thank you for that. Obviously, it sounds like everybody needs to work better, and if it's contacting the PUC so we can make sure that they're aware that there are specialized community partners that need to be included in that level. We'll work on that. My other question was with the weather stations. How is it determined where those weather readings are taken? Because especially in Malibu, we have areas, we understand the canyons may have winds, but then there's other areas in the community that don't. So how experienced are the people who are checking the weather and everything actually with the special needs of those communities? How much do you even know about our different cities? Because what could be happening in Westlake or Calabasas may not translate into Malibu. And are you just making a decision based on our region and not specific places within those communities?
Sure. In the moment, it's based on the wind threshold, and it's a really clear, oh, thank you. We even have a little graphic. It's really clear once the wind reaches that threshold along the weather station, that is when we're going to turn it off. So, and I know, council member, one of the challenges with that, of course, is we have some circuits, particularly in this area, like the Vicasa, that run from, all through Topanga Canyon and impact Calabasas. So to that end, if I'm in the middle of the canyon and you have high winds, but on the Calabasas, on the valley side, it's quiet, because sometimes that happens to us in the valley side. We don't have the winds that you have on the other side, but it's the same circuit, and that circuit is quite long. Then again, regardless of where the wind hits where the wind speed hits that circuit, the whole circuit is going to be impacted. It's why we're looking at things like segmentation, which would allow us to take that very, very long circuit and look at how we're able to create segments so that the impact isn't so severe across multiple different climates. And again, different sides of the hill, different levels of wind. Right now, it is all one circuit. So any threshold that is reached on any part of that circuit will cause an impact to the whole circuit, which is part of, I think, what is causing some of this notion that you see in the slide, which is, it's not windy near my house, but my power is shut off. And that creates, I think, a very confusing experience for many of our residents, because they don't physically see outside. It's something, again, in my short time, I've heard regularly and across our service area, where people aren't seeing those impacts, and it creates more frustration, because they're like, it's not windy, but my power is off. It means that somewhere along that circuit, the threshold's been reached, and the whole circuit, again, is de-energized from a safety standpoint. So that is something, again, we're thinking through. How do we create smaller pockets? How do we figure this out so that, to your point, it can be a little bit more micro-targeted in terms of where the wind actually is? Another big part of that is the hardening work that is so critical. It allows us to raise those thresholds, right? If you have a covered conductor wire, if you are underground, you're going to have a higher wind threshold than if you're just bare wire, where you have a lower wind threshold. So being able to even raise everything to covered conductor, gives us a little bit of a more wiggle room on the wind speeds than if we're working with bare wire. So that is, again, why that work is so critical.
And Carla, can I add on too for some Malibu specific information? So Councilmember, and we'll discuss this more at the town hall on Thursday and the tour that you're going to take with our project manager. But this is why it's so critically important for us to prioritize the work in the canyons, because the canyons, all the circuits in Malibu are fed by one canyon or another. And that's the area where typically we have the concerns. And it's critically important that we get easements from all of the customers. So that way those entire sections can be underground, because if even one property is above ground, that creates a point where that whole downstream circuit is subject to PSPS. So this is why, we're putting in so much effort to try to secure those easements from all the private property owners, so that way we can underground whole sections and therefore either reduce or eliminate the need for PSPS downstream.
Okay. And then I think, my other question was, do you actually have personnel in the field with the weather to
No,
be
no.
giving that feedback or anything.
If they're not in the field, we have a centralized system, so it's not someone actually physically standing out there. But again, also working closely, like our Thousand Oaks is where our service station is based for this region. So working closely with folks who are regularly out in the field, there is through line and direct communication.
Okay, and the weather stations are.
The weather stations are
think that's-
tiny little weather monitors that are physically on all of our equipment. We've installed, I think, over 1,700 weather monitors. So it is, again, technology that is feeding into. Josh,
And they're on a website. We can share the link. We'll make sure that to share the link to the website so you can see specifically where the weather stations are in your area.
Thank you.
Okay, Anika.
Thank you. So I just have a comment or an ask. After a public safety shutoff event, it would be amazing if you could re-energize the system as soon as possible, because at least on our end, it seemed a bit slow, and maybe it was just our perception, but if that could happen faster, that would be.
Yeah, and that is a perfect example of something after a PSPS event with wind. That is something where our field team is going out and physically inspecting the line. So that is why there is a lag time, because we need to make sure that there isn't a tree that's fallen, something that, our weather monitor wouldn't tell us. So we want to go out, make sure it's actually safe to re-energize the line before we do. And if it's not safe, right, that's when we're going through the process that Luis outlined, which is what repairs are needed to get that line re-energized.
You don't see it on your end if a line is down. Is that what you're saying? Like every time?
We don't see why it might be down. So we're physically going out and inspecting those lines. They are using different things. Sometimes it's with drones. Sometimes it's the field team that's going out. So there are different mechanisms. Again, some of the places, particularly in this area, it's hard to cover access. So we are using a variety of different tools. But again, it's why you have to wait. Let's say with the PSPS event and the January windstorms, you have to wait for the event to be over in many cases, right, before we're able to effectively make sure that it's safe to re-energize.
Yeah, and Councilmember, it's not so much that the line is down, it's that we want to inspect it to make sure there's no damage, because if the line was damaged during the wind event and we re-energize, we could inadvertently start a fire, which defeats the whole purpose of doing the de-energization in the first place and creates a public safety risk.
Thank you.
Alicia.
Thank you so much for this presentation. I actually live on the Vicasa segment, so everything that you spoke about with Vicasa, I can understand. But what I actually just wanted to comment on for the city of Calabasas was to add on to what Jeremy mentioned regarding our residents really being in the dark and not being able to access all of the information that's available when the power goes out. And that's just something that I really hope that we can focus on, how we communicate out all of this information when there is no power and no internet. I just wanted to make that comment. Thank you.
Thank you for adding on to that. And actually, Adrian, one of our government relations managers, just shared that we have a fact sheet that he will make sure we get around to all of you in the short run. But again, please know that that is something that is top of mind and that we will continue to reinforce, that we heard it from multiple cities on this call.
I noticed that Hope Chrisman is on the phone from the CPUC. Hope, do you want to make any comment about delays in improving SCE requests? Hope, are you there? Well, she must be muted. Okay. All right. Do we have any other further questions? Not at this time. All right. Thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to continuing conversation. And Carla, the PowerPoint presentation, does Terry have that so he can send it out to all of us?
We'll make sure he does. Absolutely, okay. President.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on. So proposed letter to Supervisor Horvath regarding sheriff staffing. I recently spoke with Rudy Bermudez, and I see he's on the call. I'm the executive director of the Association of Los Angeles Deputy Sheriffs, or ALADS, who said he has spoken with many of the city council members from our COG cities, along with council members from other contract cities, regarding Sheriff Luna's testimony before the Board of Supervisors last month, wherein he detailed the serious understaffing of deputies within the Sheriff's Department. ALADS is requesting that our COG send the attached letter to Supervisor Horvath. I'm requesting that each of us take this back to our respective cities for consideration and it be scheduled for action at the April COG meeting. Does anybody have any comments? Any comments? No, seeing none. We will continue this matter at the April COG meeting. And if Jen Situ, Jen, are you there?
Good morning, I am here.
Would you like to speak on this?
I agree with the sheriff. As you guys know, it's always a staffing issue here at Malibu Lost Hills. And I mean, I'm not the only one facing it. Every station is facing it. So any help that you can offer, we would really appreciate it. Our community would be better for it. Our personnel are tired, especially with the fire that we've had. They're burnt out, but yet they are still dedicated in showing up and doing the work and working a lot of overtime to ensure that our communities are safe. So any help that you can offer, we would really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We'll bring it back next month. Now we move on to the Executive Director's report. I'd like to ask Terry to give his report.
Thank you, President Sylvester. Just a few things I'd like to highlight, especially regarding the COGS fiber network. On March 11th, the committee consisting of the city managers, Nate, Gloria, and Rob, along with Rob DeBoe and Tatiana Holden from Public Works, we interviewed 5 firms that had proposed to do construction project management for the COG fiber project. We have a second meeting tomorrow with the top firm, and I expect, if things go as planned, to have a recommendation to the governing board at the April meeting. The construction bid packages and maps was posted earlier this month on Planet Bids, and we had a mandatory pre-bid meeting last week, with 12 contractors participating. Our consultant in trust felt that that was a very good sign. They were all the contractors were very engaged in the discussion. So we're hoping to get at least 5 or 6 competitive bids. So that was very encouraging. And our committee and our consultant plans to hold a second meeting with Astound. They were the firm that proposed to operate, maintain, and expand the COG project, but we will schedule a second meeting with them in person to have further discussion. As I previously reported earlier, with regard to homeless funding, the county, with the passage of Measure A, is now kind of shuffling the deck with the funding that would be allocated to the COGs and the cities and the nonprofits under the guidance of Measure A. And as a result of that, there have been several scenarios that have been considered by the by LASA, by the county, and this is eventually going to get to the Board of Supervisors with a recommendation. As you may know, our annual allocation has been $120,000. We've been able to afford reserving the extra beds for Malibu and the extra beds for the other COG cities along the 101 with San Fernando Valley Health, because we had carried over funds from our earlier years. However, now we're really in a position where we're spending about $325,000 a year for COG outreach, the beds, and administrative support. So we really need to have a number that's allocated to us that's at least that amount. So with the coordination of President Sylvester, I prepared a letter that I shared with the governing board and city managers. Penny was kind enough to sign it. I did forward that to Jonah Glickman, who's the homeless deputy for Supervisor Horvath. And we're in hopes that the scenario that is selected will allow our COG to receive funding in the $500,000 to $600,000 range. Not that we need all that money, and we're not trying to just get an allocation and have a stack of unused funds. However, we do have an opportunity in the future to look at mental health counseling, addiction counseling, other things that we could offer as a resource and utilize some of that additional funding. So it's very important, and we do have the support of Supervisor Horvath's deputy, as I said, and we're hoping that they're going to make a positive decision as it relates to the funding coming to us. I attended with regard to the debris removal at the Palisades fire, I attended the Board of Supervisors meeting, and everyone knows how the vote went there. However, I did reach out to AQMD to request that they perform additional air quality monitoring adjacent to the Calabasas landfill. I know that Calabasas had also sent a letter requesting that. We have a meeting this week that I will be facilitating with our new AQMD board member, Brenda Olmos, who was just recently elected. She's a council member for Paramount, and she represents our area, and she's agreed to have a meeting with us to discuss that. So I know Alicia and Nico have been invited along with the city managers. So I expect to be able to provide an update following that meeting with regard to testing that could happen in the area. So that was encouraging. And then our Measure M funding, as you know, we have a significant portion allocated for the COGS fiber project. However, with our new allocation that will be coming down, I will be starting meetings with all of our COG cities to discuss upcoming Measure M projects that would be eligible for funding. And I'll be putting that together over the next few months with the COGS Highway Working Group, which is representative from each one of the COG cities. And then I will have that kind of put together at the end of summer. We'll share it with the city managers to make sure that everybody's on board. Obviously, we'll be discussing it in between, but we'll share it with the city managers to make sure that they're comfortable with it. And then we'll go to the governing board, most likely in September, as we usually do for our Measure M allocations. And that concludes my report, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Terry? Seeing none, we'll move on to city updates. Nate, you're up.
Good morning, President, Board. Today, just real quickly, I want to update everybody that we are working on an evacuation analysis, which is very timely based on everything that's happened beginning of this year. We'll be updating our safety element and have looked at all the impacts to the freeways and the exits in and out of the city. In addition, in case you haven't heard, the wildlife crossing will be closing the Liberty Canyon off-ramps for about a month, and that'll be related to the work done on stage 1. And then upcoming, probably in the next year or so, stage 2 will require Agoura Road to be closed for periods of time. And so we don't have the exact details of that, but we are working with Caltrans on that. Probably doesn't impact everybody here, but some of the cities may be impacted. So wanted to just provide the information now. And then finally, one of the really creative things my team's come up with is a new podcast. It's called Next Gen. And we are working with local high school students and our youth, and just really featuring them and trying to find ways to include them more in everything we do in the community. So I want to thank Mayor Sylvester for supporting this program and really highlighting our youth And with that, I'll turn it over to you, President Sylvester, or Jeremy, if you have anything to add.
Jeremy, no, thank you very much. And I'd like to also thank Mary Haddad for all the work she has done, and Ramiro too, in opening up the high school. So thank you. All right, Kendon.
Good morning, President and board members. It's good to be with you. Just a couple of items. Like many of you, Calabasas has just started its community wildfire protection plan. I know that each of us are in different phases of that. We had our kickoff meeting just recently in the last couple of weeks. We're excited to move forward with that. Also, just a couple of things that our council has approved that we're excited about. And again, many of you as cities are already doing this. We've entered into an agreement with a government advocacy group or a lobbyist. This is the first for us in a long time, and I know it's been successful for many of you in doing that. At this next meeting, we're coming back with a contract for a grant writer to see if we can bring in some additional funding. And similar to that, our council recently authorized to bring in an outside facilitator to do goal setting and strategic planning. And Rob, I know that you've mentioned this is something that Westlake has done every few years. And so we're excited to start that process, especially as we come close to our 35th anniversary next year. And then one project that's exciting for us is digital kiosks. So we recently had a number of our businesses, our larger shopping centers, I guess, come forward and ask to move away from static sign-based kiosks and go to digital kiosks. And what we did is we took this as an opportunity to require that each of these digital kiosks that are put in include video cameras in that kiosk that provide more surveillance for the area. And these cameras would be tied in to the real-time crime center at the Lost Hill Station. So we're excited about that. I think it becomes a win-win where the shopping centers can advertise and generate that revenue, but it gives us a chance to tie those cameras into the station for more monitoring and surveillance in these potentially high crime areas, as we're seeing with retail crime and other things. And that's all I have, but thank you for the time.
Thank you. Alicia's not with us, right? So we'll move on. Gloria for Hidden Hills.
Hi, good morning, Penny. Thank you. Just a couple things. Just like everyone else working on fire prevention projects, the City of Hidden Hills is just hired a consultant to engage the community and begin to become a Firewise community. I know everyone is very interested in doing that, and so we're on our way. So I think in the next couple of weeks we'll become a Firewise community. So we're very excited. We've also just council approved the red flag warning ordinance, which is going to prevent during red flag warnings any possible spark tools to be used in the city. And so we're very excited about that. The community is also very excited. And then lastly, we have a mural round meadow landscaping project that is now starting as well, which also we're going to be using Measure M funding. So thank you to Metro and Terry for allocating those funds for us. And that concludes my report. And I believe Iniko had to leave early today.
Thank you. Joe for Malibu.
Yes, hi, good morning. Not necessarily a lot for this group. Obviously, our highest priority is fire recovery and rebuild going forward. So we have a lot of community and council meetings both this week and on a weekly basis. So some of the ones that may have some impact for this group: on Thursday, March 20th, we have an SCE town hall discussing undergrounding of some of the circuits that are in relation to the fire area, most specifically the Nicholas circuit, and it's a chance for Q&A with our community to talk about the future of undergrounding and different issues with restoring power. So that should be a good discussion. Wednesday, March 26th, we are working with Supervisor Horvath's office to target that date at least for the Caltrans PCH virtual town hall. She typically has virtual town halls on Wednesdays. So we're working with her to use one of her virtual town halls for that discussion, which is timely. I know there's a lot of pent-up demand to discuss the PCH and the future of it and the long road ahead. for getting it back to a stable state for traffic. And then not directly related to the fire, but the long-term plan of Caltrans PCH master planning that they had done, and they were going to have a community workshop back in December. Obviously, that got postponed with everything going on. They are now tentatively scheduled to have that on April 9th here at Malibu Council Chambers. So a number of items that do impact all of our adjacent cities. And so that's my immediate report. I don't know if Mayor Pro Tem has anything else she'd like to cover.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, Penny. Go ahead.
I was just calling on you.
One, I want to just take a moment to continue to compliment our staff. They have risen far beyond any expectations that any of us could possibly have for our team. We were able to open our rebuild center. So if anybody's interested in seeing the Malibu way to rebuild, we have a rebuild center that's adjacent to City Hall, where all our fire rebuilds are able to access information. And then I'm going to make a plea for our commercial businesses in Malibu. I encourage everybody, if you can possibly come for a day or some time, to come visit some of our commercial businesses. They're really, really struggling with the closures of Pacific Coast Highway to the south. So just come and see Malibu, and the west side and central part of Malibu is as it ever is. And come enjoy the beach or our hiking trails or anything like that, and try and see and spend some money in our commercial centers. We would greatly appreciate it. Thank you for being great neighbors.
Thank you. Yes, we'll push that out on our social media to our residents. Rob, Westlake.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Yeah, very busy, lots of priorities in Westlake Village, but overall things are going very well. I'll reserve my comments to next month, given the time. But offer Councilmember Pearl, if you have anything to add. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll now move on to our public safety.
I have one, Penny.
Yes, sorry.
Just one really quick comment. Ray, you don't have anything before me? Okay. This is just a happy news. If you happen to be driving through our beautiful city, please swing by the new Ridge, which is our new senior living center, because they just installed the new art piece out front. It's our first really major piece of public art. It's so beautiful and exquisite. And I just wanted to give some good news today. You will love it, and come to Westlake, and we will come to Malibu.
Thank you, Kelly. So public safety, legislative, and agency partner updates. Captain C2. I used to, yes.
Yes. Hi, good morning. Just a few things. We have our open house on April 26th. That's always a fun event for the community, and especially after all this craziness, we would love for you all to join us with the community. We will have our helicopter, our ponies, our SWAT team, and I guess everybody's favorite, a tour of the jail. I don't know why that's everybody's favorite, but it is. So come to jail with me, it'll be great. And then on this Saturday, we have our 3rd annual Women's Recruitment Symposium. So you just heard Penny discuss our challenges with recruitment. Interesting to know, right after the fires, I actually had an influx of people from the community that wanted to be deputy sheriff. I'm currently helping 3 different people in the process of becoming deputy sheriffs that are directly from our community. So that's really something to be excited about, because it really shows that they were inspired by the performance of our deputies. So if you know anyone, male or female, even though it's a women's symposium, there will be males out there that are going to be taking the test on this same day. People can take the entire test, and clearly my department scraped the bottom of the barrel, so I will be the MC for the day. Oh my gosh. And then March 16th. I don't have March 16th on here. Something's important on March 16th. Or sorry, March 26th. Oh, March 26th. Future Foundation is having a seniors Congress. I hope you all know about this. We just hired, not hired, but a volunteer came to our staff. She is an expert on cyber. And that's something that's targeted our communities a lot, especially with our seniors. And so her and I are going to speak on how seniors can be safe with some of the text messages they've received, emails, all the stuff that have been taking advantage of our seniors. We are going to give them some tools. So love for you guys to come out and see it. Also, our new volunteer, Flynn, would be willing to partner with any of the cities to go out and talk to the seniors about how to keep themselves safe on the internet and these text messages and emails. So please take advantage of our awesome new volunteer from Topanga. And that's all I have. Any questions for Malibu Lost Hills?
Thank you so much. Any questions for Captain C2? No, seeing none. I don't think we have the fire department on anymore. Is Daniel Vicente here from Supervisor Horvath? No. Okay, CHP. We have Officer Sturgis.
Good morning, everyone. So what I have for you today is a traffic report from last month, and I'll compare it to February of 2024 as well. So in February 2025, there were 28 crashes total on the 101 running through your cities. So 16 of those were property damage only. 12 of those had injuries, 6 of which were hit and runs. One of those drivers was charged with a felony, and one was arrested for DUI and hit and run. And then 4 of them, there was not enough information, such as we didn't have the license plate number for the vehicle that had fled the scene. There were 3 DUI related crashes as well. Now, majority of those crashes occurred on the freeway in the Calabasas area, so that's 15 crashes total. And most of those happened between LA city limits and Lost Hills Road. And then 11 crashes occurred between Liberty Canyon Road and Lindero Canyon Road, and 2 crashes occurred between Lindero Canyon Road and Ventura County line. And then as far as crashes on PCH, there were no crashes on PCH outside of Malibu city limits because that's what we handle down there. And then in the Santa Monica Mountains, we had 5 crashes. 2 of those were injury related and 3 of those property damage only. And those included DUI, improper turn, unsafe speed for conditions, and wrong way driving. And then as far as those 28 crashes on the freeway, causes of those were 9 of those were unsafe turning movements. 13 of those were unsafe speed for conditions. So a lot of those were rear end crashes in that area I mentioned, which is between Lost Hills Road and LA city limits on the 101. 3 of those were DUI, and 2 of those had an unknown cause, and 1 of those was due to an object thrown from a vehicle. And then February 2024, there was 24 crashes, so 4 less. And there 11 had injuries and 13 were property damage only. There were no hit and runs, and there's 1 DUI. And then of those crashes, 17 of those were due to unsafe speed for conditions. 2 of those were unknown, and 3 of them were due to an unsafe turning movement. As I said, 1 DUI and then 1 unsafe lane change. 19 of those crashes were in the Calabasas area, 4 crashes between Liberty Canyon Road and Lindero Canyon Road, and 1 crash between Lindero Canyon Road and Ventura County line. Now there's 1 crash on PCH in February last year outside of Malibu city limits. That was due to unsafe speed. There were 8 crashes in the Santa Monica Mountains. 4 of those had injuries and 4 of those were property damage only. 1 was a hit and run, 1 was a DUI. The hit and run did not have any follow-up. And then as far as what else we have going on, we have officers deployed to the Palisades currently, and that's, from what I've told, that's going to be indefinitely. So you'll see a lot more officers down on PCH. They're doing crime suppression and looking for looters. We haven't had any additional major incidents since the fires and mudslides. And our Malibu task force is still down on PCH. The 3 officers that are on the task force are still working in the area and issuing citations. And that is all I have.
Thank you so much. Officer Sturgis, is it possible for you to submit a written report each month so that we can get all these details?
Yeah, absolutely.
That
I
would
can
be,
do
if you could send it to Terry ahead of our meeting, that would be really great. Thank you so much. Jeff, it's your turn.
Good morning, everyone. I put a link to my report in it. Hopefully you'll have a moment to look at that. It does have a lot of information on legislation. Cal Cities is carrying 16 bills as sponsor this year. So we have quite a few things we're working on. Many of them are repeats from previous years, but also plenty of additional ones, just ideas that we've brought from our members. There's also in the very beginning of that report some information about some of the highlights of some of the big bills that we're talking about. We also had our first legislative briefing of the year yesterday via webinar. I'm going to be putting out some more of that information either at the end of this week or early next week once we get some of that information in a written form. Talking about all the bills that we really are highlighting. Legislature really is kind of kicking off a lot of their committee work this week. So we don't have a lot of positions on all of these bills. We always have to meet with the author's office and try to make those bills better before we take official positions. So we certainly have positions on our sponsored bills, but not as many as we would like on some of the other ones. But those will be rolling out in the next couple of weeks. But that's all I wanted to chat about today, but happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Anybody have any questions for Jeff? And that was a great webinar yesterday, updating us. So thank you for that. Nick Fox from Metro. Would you like to contribute anything?
Yes, hi there. Thanks so much for having me. Just briefly letting you know that we have our 134 line back up and running on its normal route. It was stop and start for a while. We were able to reopen it last week, and then there was a rock slide that happened on PCH and we had to reclose it. But as of Saturday, this last Saturday, we are running our regular route on the 134. I also know that many have expressed interest in taking a deeper look at Metro services, and Terry, I believe we're scheduled for next month, right? Senior Executive Officer Joe Forgerini is going to be joining the COG meeting next week to answer questions and provide insights into Metro's thinking. So stay tuned for more Metro in April. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other legislative partners that would like to speak? Anyone else? Okay, great. Are there any general comments or requests for future agenda items? Seeing none, the Technical Advisory Committee will meet next week on April the 2nd, and the next governing board meeting will be April the 15th. And if there's no further business, I will adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Bye.